Marseille, 1940. The air smells of salt and diesel, mingling with the acrid smoke of burning documents. The city's heart still beats, but it's a nervous rhythm now. Half Mediterranean charm, half occupied terror. In a small cafe near the viewport, a woman sits alone at a corner table. Her name is Nancy Wake, and she wears a tailored dress that speaks of money and confidence. Dark hair frames a face that could launch ships or stop hearts. She lights a cigarette with steady hands, but her eyes never stop moving. They track every person who enters, every shadow that shifts in the doorway. This is not vanity. This is survival. Nancy came to France for love and adventure. She found both in Henri Fiacca, a wealthy industrialist with soft hands and a softer heart. They married in 1939, just as Europe began its descent into hell. She was a journalist then, covering the rise of fascism with a sharp pen and sharper instincts. She saw the rallies in Vienna, the broken glass in Berlin, the fear in Jewish eyes. She saw what was coming. Now it's here. The Germans march through Paris with their boots polished and their flags flying. The Vichy government bows and scrapes, eager to please their new masters. And in the shadows, a resistance begins to form, fragile, desperate, dangerous. Nancy doesn't set out to be a hero. Heroes, she thinks, are fools who get themselves killed. But she can't sit idle while the world burns. She starts small. A Jewish family needs false papers, she knows a forger. A British pilot is shot down near Lyon, she knows a safe house. A resistance fighter needs medicine, she knows a sympathetic pharmacist. She becomes a courier, moving money and messages through occupied France. Her beauty is her weapon. The Germans see a socialite, a harmless distraction. They don't see the steel beneath the silk. She flirts with officers at parties, laughing at their jokes while memorizing their faces, their ranks, their routines. She learns which checkpoints are lazy, which guards can be bribed, which roads are watched. She becomes a ghost in plain sight. But ghosts leave traces. The Gestapo begins to notice patterns, escapes that shouldn't have succeeded, networks that shouldn't have survived. They don't have a name yet, but they have a suspicion. Someone is helping the enemies of the Reich. Someone clever. Someone close. Nancy doesn't know it yet, but she's already on a list, and the Gestapo never forgets. Marseille, 1943. The city has changed. It's not just occupied now, it's strangled. The Gestapo tightens its grip daily, and the streets that once hummed with life now whisper with fear. Nancy Wake is no longer a dilettante playing at resistance. She's become something else entirely. They call her the White Mouse, now La Souris Blanche, a ghost the Gestapo cannot catch. She's at the top of their most wanted list, with a bounty of 5 million francs on her head. She doesn't know this yet. She's too busy staying alive. The work has escalated. Nancy no longer just carries messages. She leads escape lines, smuggling Allied pilots and Jewish refugees across the Pyrenees into Spain. The mountain crossings are brutal, freezing nights, treacherous paths, border guards with itchy trigger fingers. She makes the journey dozens of times, guiding strangers through snow and stone, her feet bleeding in elegant shoes never meant for mountains. She learns to carry a gun. She learns to lie without hesitation. She learns to sleep with one eye open. But the Gestapo is closing in. They've infiltrated networks, turned informants, broken codes. Friends disappear in the night. Safe houses become traps. The net is tightening and Nancy can feel it. Then comes the knock she's been dreading. Not on her door, on Henry's. The Gestapo takes him in the early hours of a frozen morning. They know he's married to the White Mouse. They know he knows where she is. They want him to talk. Nancy hears the news from a contact in the police. Her husband is in custody. They're torturing him for information. She has a choice: run or try to save him. Every instinct screams at her to run. Staying means capture, torture, death. But Henri is her husband, the man who loved her when she was just a journalist with big dreams. The man who funded the resistance with his own money, knowing it could cost him everything. She makes plans to break him out. She bribes guards, scouts the building, assembles a team. But before she can act, word comes through the network. Henri is dead. He died under interrogation without giving up a single name. Not hers. Not anyone's. Nancy doesn't cry. Not yet. There's no time for grief in occupied France. She buries the pain deep and keeps moving, but something inside her hardens. This is no longer about adventure or even justice. This is personal. The Gestapo killed the man she loved, and Nancy Wake will make them pay for every second of his suffering. French Pyrenees, April 1943. The snow is deeper than Nancy expected. It reaches past her knees in places, and every step is a battle. Her lungs burn. Her legs scream. Behind her, 6 others struggle in her footsteps: a Belgian pilot, 2 British airmen, a Polish Jew, and 2 French resistance. They're running for their lives. The Gestapo is hours behind them, maybe less. Nancy pushes forward. She's crossed these mountains before, but never like this, never hunted, never desperate. The group has been walking for 18 hours. They have no food left. One of the airmen has frostbite. The Polish man is delirious with fever. But stopping means death. So they walk. The border guard appears without warning, rifle raised. Spanish. Neutral, technically, but sympathies shift like sand. Nancy steps forward, speaking rapid Spanish, her charm weaponized, even here, exhausted and frozen. She offers money. She offers promises. She offers whatever it takes. The guard looks at her, then at the ragged group behind her. He lowers his rifle. Go. Quickly. They stumble into Spain as dawn breaks. From there, it's a blur. Safe houses, bribes, forged papers, a long journey south to Gibraltar, and, finally, a British ship. Nancy collapses on the deck as England rises from the sea. She's safe, but safety feels like failure. Henri is dead. France is still occupied. The war is far from over. And Nancy Wake is not done fighting. In London, she's debriefed by British intelligence. They're impressed. They want her to go back. Not as a courier this time, as something more. The Special Operations Executive is recruiting agents for sabotage operations behind enemy lines. The work is brutal, the odds of survival slim. Most agents don't last 6 months. Nancy volunteers immediately. They send her to Scotland for training. Parachute jumps, hand-to-hand combat, explosives, codes, survival. She's the only woman in her class, and she outperforms most of the men. She learns to kill silently. She learns to blow up bridges. She learns to endure interrogation without breaking. The instructors are impressed. They've trained hundreds of agents, but Nancy Wake is different. She has something most don't, a score to settle. By early 1944, she's ready. The invasion of Europe is coming, and the SOE needs agents in France to coordinate with the resistance, to sabotage railways and communications, to make the Nazis bleed from within. Nancy is assigned to the Auvergne region, a mountainous stronghold of Maquis fighters. She'll parachute in blind, with no backup and no guarantee of survival. On the night of April 29, 1944, Nancy Wake boards a plane bound for occupied France. She wears a jumpsuit and carries a pistol, a knife, and a cyanide pill in case of capture. She's terrified. She's exhilarated. She's going home. The plane's engines roar. The jump light turns green. Nancy steps into the darkness and falls toward France like a comet. The white mouse is back. And this time, she's not running. Auvergne, Central France, April 30th, 1944. Nancy hits the ground hard. The parachute collapses around her like a shroud, and for a moment she can't breathe. Her ribs ache. Her ankle throbs. But she's alive. She cuts herself free and looks around. Moonlight filters through the trees, casting everything in silver and shadow. She's supposed to be met by a reception committee, local Maquis fighters who will take her to their camp. But the field is empty. No signal lights. No whispered passwords. Nothing. She's alone in occupied France with a pistol, a radio, and no idea where she is. This is the moment when most agents panic. Nancy doesn't. She buries her parachute, checks her compass, and starts walking. 3 hours later, she finds a farmhouse. An old woman answers her knock, eyes wide with fear. Nancy speaks quickly in French, giving the code phrase she memorized in London. The woman's face softens. "You're late," she says. "The Germans came through yesterday. Your friends had to move." She gives Nancy directions, 10 kilometers north through the forest to a village called Cosny d'Allier. Nancy walks through the night. By dawn, she finds them. The Maquis are not what she expected. They're not soldiers, they're farmers, shopkeepers, students. Boys really with stolen rifles and homemade grenades. They live in the forest like outlaws, sleeping in caves and abandoned barns, always one step ahead of German patrols. Their leader is a man named Gaspard, a former engineer with tired eyes and steady hands. He looks Nancy up and down with undisguised skepticism. London sent him a woman? For this? Nancy doesn't wait for permission. She unpacks her radio, sets up the antenna, and sends her first transmission to London. White Mouse has landed, ready to work. Over the next days, she assesses the situation. The Maquis have courage but no organization. No training. No supplies. They're armed with ancient rifles and dying of dysentery in the woods. Nancy gets to work. She coordinates weapons drops from London, crates of Sten guns, explosives, ammunition, medicine. She organizes the men into units, teaches them basic tactics, drills them on ambush techniques. She becomes their quartermaster, their strategist, their link to the outside world. The men are skeptical at first. A woman giving orders? In combat? But Nancy doesn't argue. She shows them. When a German convoy passes nearby, she leads the ambush herself. She's the first one in position, the first to open fire, the last to retreat. The attack is textbook perfect, quick, brutal, devastating. 10 Germans dead, 0 Maquis casualties. After that, no one questions her authority. They start calling her Madame Andre, her code name, but among themselves, they call her something else. La Madonna, not because she's gentle, because she's fierce. She fights like a woman possessed, and she never asks them to do anything she won't do herself. But the work is brutal. They sabotage railways, blow up bridges, ambush patrols. The Germans retaliate with savage reprisals, burning villages, executing civilians, hunting the Maquis with dogs and flamethrowers. Nancy sees horrors she'll never forget. A village razed to the ground. Children shot in the street. Old men hanged from telephone poles. This is total war, and there's no mercy on either side. She hardens further. The glamorous socialite from Marseille is gone. In her place is something colder, sharper, deadlier. Nancy Wake is becoming a weapon. Auvergne, June 1944. The invasion is coming. Everyone knows it. The BBC sends coded messages every night, the long sobs of autumn violins, meaningless phrases that tell the resistance. Be ready. Nancy's Maquis has grown from a few hundred men to over 7,000. They control a vast stretch of central France, a thorn in the side of the German occupation. But control means targets. The Germans send entire divisions to hunt them down. The Maquis strikes and melts away, strikes and melts away. It's a deadly game of cat and mouse, and the stakes are growing higher every day. Then disaster strikes. Nancy's radio operator is killed in a German ambush. Without him, she has no way to communicate with London, no way to coordinate weapons drops, no way to receive orders. The invasion could happen any day, and she's blind. There's a backup radio in a town called Saint-Santin, over 200 kilometers away. But getting there means crossing German-occupied territory, checkpoints, patrols, collaborators who'd turn her in for a pack of cigarettes. It's suicide. Nancy finds a bicycle. It's an ancient thing, rusted and squeaking, with tires held together by prayer. She straps a pistol under her jacket and starts riding. 200 kilometers. Through enemy lines. Alone. The journey is hell. Her legs burn. Her hands blister. The bicycle breaks down twice. She fixes it with wire and desperation. She rides through checkpoints with forged papers and a smile, chatting with German soldiers while her heart hammers in her chest. She rides through the night, through the rain, through exhaustion that makes her hallucinate. At one point, she falls asleep on the bike and wakes up in a ditch. She gets back on and keeps riding. 72 hours after she starts, Nancy reaches St. Santon. She retrieves the radio, turns around, and rides back. By the time she returns to camp, she's barely conscious. Her legs are shredded. Her hands are bleeding. She's lost 15 pounds. She collapses into Gaspard's arms. "I got it," she whispers. They carry her to a barn and let her sleep for 20 hours straight. When she wakes, D-Day has begun. Allied forces are landing on the beaches of Normandy. The invasion she's been preparing for is finally here. And because Nancy Wake rode a bicycle 200 kilometers through hell, the Maquis of Auvergne is ready. They blow up railways. They destroy communication lines. They ambush German reinforcements trying to reach Normandy. They tied down an entire SS division that could have turned the tide at the beaches. Historians will later estimate that Nancy's bicycle ride and the operations it enabled saved thousands of Allied lives during the invasion. But Nancy doesn't think about history. She thinks about Henri, about the friends she's lost, about the villages burned in reprisal. She thinks about revenge, and she gets back to work. Auvergne, July 1944. The summer is brutal. Not just the heat, the fighting. The Germans know the Allies are pushing inland from Normandy. They're desperate, vicious, willing to do anything to slow the advance. The Maquis faces constant attacks. SS units sweep through the mountains with flamethrowers and artillery. They burn entire forests trying to smoke out the resistance. Casualties mount. Supplies dwindle. But the Maquis holds. Nancy is everywhere at once, coordinating ambushes, calling in airstrikes, treating wounded men with morphine stolen from German field hospitals. She sleeps 2 hours a night. She eats whatever's available, which is usually nothing. She loses more weight. Her clothes hang off her like sacks, but her eyes stay sharp. Then comes the night that will define her legend. Nancy is leading a small patrol near a German encampment. Intelligence says there's a supply depot, food, ammunition, fuel. The Maquis needs it desperately. The plan is reconnaissance only. Study the camp. Report back. Plan a proper raid later. But as they watch from the treeline, a German sentry wanders too close. He's young, maybe 19, cigarette glowing in the darkness. He's walking right toward their position. If he sees them, he'll raise the alarm. The entire camp will be on them in seconds. Nancy's men freeze, waiting for her order. She motions them to stay down. Then she moves. Silent as smoke, she slips through the shadows. The sentry doesn't hear her until it's too late. Nancy's training kicks in. Techniques learned in Scotland, practiced 100 times on dummies. But this isn't a dummy. This is a human being. She strikes fast and hard. One hand over his mouth, the other finding the pressure point on his neck. He struggles, tries to scream. She holds on. The training said 30 seconds. It takes longer. His body goes limp. Nancy lowers him to the ground, checks for a pulse. Nothing. She's just killed a man with her bare hands. She should feel something, horror, guilt, remorse, but she feels nothing. Just cold calculation. One less Nazi. One step closer to ending this war. She signals her men. They raid the depot, load up supplies, and vanish before the Germans realize what happened. Back at camp, word spreads quickly. Madame Andre killed a German sentry with her bare hands. No gun, no knife, just her hands. The story grows with each telling. By morning, it's legend. Nancy says nothing. She cleans her weapons and prepares for the next mission. But that night, alone in her tent, she finally lets herself think about what she's become. The journalist who came to France for love, the socialite who played at resistance, the woman who once believed in civilization, in rules, in humanity. All gone. The war has burned it all away, leaving something harder, colder, more dangerous. She thinks about Henri. Wonders if he'd recognize her now. Wonders if she'd recognize herself. Outside, the men are singing. French songs, old songs, songs of resistance and revenge. Nancy listens and feels nothing. She's won the right to feel nothing. Tomorrow the war continues, and Nancy Wake will continue with it, killing when necessary, surviving when possible, never stopping until the job is done. London, October 1945. The city celebrates victory with a fervor that borders on madness. Streets, once darkened by blackout curtains, now blaze with light. Pubs overflow with soldiers sharing stories of triumph. Strangers kiss in Trafalgar Square. The war is over and everyone is drunk on relief. But for Nancy Wake, sitting alone in her Kensington flat, the silence is deafening. France was liberated in August 1944. Nancy stayed until the end, leading her Maquis through the final battles. When the Germans finally retreated, the people of Auvergne carried her through the streets on their shoulders. They gave her wine and flowers and tears of gratitude. The Free French government awarded her the Croix de Guerre. The British gave her the George Medal. The Americans gave her the Medal of Freedom. She has more decorations than most generals. She feels nothing. The flat is cold, empty. She hasn't unpacked yet, doesn't see the point. There's a bottle of whiskey on the table, half empty, or half full, depending on how you look at it. Nancy pours another glass and stares out the window at the celebrating crowds below. She's 33 years old. She's killed more people than she can count. She's seen friends die in her arms. She's blown up bridges, derailed trains, executed collaborators without hesitation. She was good at it, too good. And now she's supposed to what? Go back to being a socialite? Attend parties? Make small talk about the weather? The thought is absurd. She tried going back to France, to Marseille, to the life she had before. But Henry's family blamed her. If she hadn't been in the resistance, they said Henri would still be alive. They weren't wrong. She tried staying with the Maquis, but they were disbanding. The fighters were going home to their farms and families. Gaspard gave her a long hug and told her she'd always have a home in Auvergne. But it wasn't her home. She has no home. The war took everything from her. Her husband, her innocence, her ability to pretend the world is anything other than brutal and random and cruel. So she sits in London and drinks whiskey and watches people celebrate a peace she doesn't feel. The nightmares come every night now. Henry's face, the villages burning, the young German sentries' eyes as the life left them. She wakes up gasping, reaching for a gun that isn't there. A knock on the door interrupts her thoughts. It's a man from the SOE bringing her final paycheck and discharge papers. He's polite, professional. He thanks her for her service. She signs the papers without reading them. As he's leaving, he pauses. "What will you do now, Miss Wake?" Nancy looks at him, realizes she has no answer. "I don't know," she says. It's the most honest thing she's said in months. After he leaves, she pours another drink. Outside, London celebrates. Inside, Nancy Wake sits in the dark and wonders if peace is harder than war. Australia, 1960. Nancy Wake stands on the deck of a ship approaching Sydney Harbor. She's 48 years old now, her dark hair streaked with gray. She left Europe years ago, unable to find peace among the ruins of her old life. She tried England. She tried France. She tried moving forward, tried forgetting. Nothing worked. So she's come home to Australia, the country she left as a young woman seeking adventure. Maybe here, on the other side of the world, she can finally outrun the ghosts. Sydney welcomes her with sunshine and indifference. The city has moved on. The war is history now, something in textbooks. People talk about the future, new cars, new houses, new lives. Nancy gets a small flat in King's Cross and tries to build something resembling a normal existence. She takes a job in a department store. She joins a social club. She goes through the motions of being ordinary. But ordinary doesn't fit anymore. At night, she sits alone with her memories and her medals locked in a drawer where no one can see them. She doesn't talk about the war. When people ask what she did, she says she was a nurse. It's easier than the truth. The truth is too big, too dark, too strange for polite conversation. How do you explain killing men with your bare hands to someone buying curtains? How do you describe coordinating guerrilla warfare to someone worried about their garden? You don't. So Nancy stays quiet and drinks too much and feels like a ghost haunting her own life. Money becomes a problem. The metals don't pay rent. The department store job barely covers expenses. She applies for a military pension. Surely the governments she served owe her something. The British say she wasn't technically in their military. The French say the same. The Australians say she wasn't fighting for Australia. Years of bureaucratic runaround, forms and rejections and polite letters explaining why the most decorated woman of World War II doesn't qualify for help. Nancy doesn't beg. She gets angry. She writes letters to newspapers. She contacts veterans' organizations. She makes noise. Slowly, reluctantly, the governments cave. Small pensions. Enough to survive, barely. It's insulting, but it's survival. She remarries in 1960 a former RAF pilot named John Forward. He's kind, steady, uncomplicated. He doesn't understand what she went through, but he doesn't ask questions either. For a while, it's enough. They move to a quiet suburb. She tries being a housewife. It lasts 3 years before John dies, suddenly of a heart attack. Nancy buries another husband and goes back to being alone. The years blur together. She moves from flat to flat, city to city. She attends occasional veterans' events, where old soldiers treat her like a curiosity, the woman who fought with the Maquis. They mean well, but they don't understand. No one understands. By the 1970s, Nancy has become what she never wanted to be, a relic, a footnote, a legend people talk about, but don't really know. She watches documentaries about the war, sees her own story told badly, with actors who look nothing like her and facts that are half wrong. She yells at the television and pours another drink. Somewhere in France, the people of Auvergne remember. They name streets after her. They put up plaques. They tell their grandchildren about La Madonna who saved them. But Nancy doesn't know this. She's in Australia, alone chasing ghosts. Auvergne, France, 1985. Nancy Wake returns to France for the first time in decades. She's 73 years old now, moving slower but still sharp-eyed, still fierce. The French government has invited her to commemorate the 40th anniversary of liberation. She almost says no. What's the point of revisiting old battlefields, old ghosts? But something pulls her back. Maybe curiosity, maybe unfinished business, maybe the need to see if any of it was real or if she imagined the whole war in some fever dream. The plane lands in Lyon. A government official meets her at the airport, all smiles and protocol. They drive north into the mountains, following roads Nancy last traveled on a stolen bicycle with Germans hunting her. The landscape has changed. Villages rebuilt. Forests regrown. Scars healed over. But Nancy remembers every kilometer. There's the ridge where they ambushed a convoy. There's the farmhouse where they hid after a raid. There's the field where parachutes dropped weapons from the sky. The memories are sharp enough to draw blood. They arrive in a small town square. Nancy expects a modest ceremony, a few old veterans, a speech, maybe a plaque. Instead, she finds thousands of people. The entire town has turned out. Old men who fought in the Maquis, now grandfathers with canes. Women who hid resistors in their barns. Children and grandchildren who've heard the stories. They're all here for her. The mayor makes a speech. He talks about the dark years of occupation, the terror of German reprisals, the desperate courage of the resistance. He talks about a woman who parachuted from the sky and taught farmers to fight like soldiers. A woman who rode 200 kilometers on a bicycle to save the resistance. A woman who killed Germans with her bare hands and never asked for anything in return. Then he turns to Nancy. "Madam, you saved us. You saved our parents. You saved France. We never forgot." The crowd erupts in applause. Nancy stands there overwhelmed. All these years, she thought she was forgotten. Thought she was just another veteran no one cared about, drinking alone in Australian flats. She was wrong. One by one, old men approach her. They shake her hand, kiss her cheeks, show her faded photographs of young fighters in the forest. That's me, they say. You trained me. You saved my life. You were our Madonna. Nancy looks at their faces, lined with age now, but the eyes are the same. The boys she led through ambushes are old men now, with families and homes and futures she helped give them. She starts to cry. She hasn't cried since Henri died, but now the tears come and won't stop. Not sad tears. Something else. Relief, maybe. Or validation. Proof that it wasn't all for nothing. That the horror and violence and loss had meaning. That she made a difference. They take her to a memorial in the forest, a stone monument with the names of Maquis fighters who died. Gaspard's name is there, and others she remembers, young men who laughed and sang and died too young. Nancy touches the cold stone and says goodbye 40 years too late. That night, there's a dinner. Wine flows. Old stories are told. The veterans argue about details. Was it July or August? Was it 10 Germans or 20? Nancy lets them argue. The details don't matter. What matters is they're here. They survived. They built lives on the ashes of war. And she helped. As the night winds down, an old man approaches her, one of the youngest Maquis, barely 16 when she trained him. He's in his 50s now, with grandchildren of his own. Madam, he says quietly, I never thanked you properly. You taught me courage. You taught me that fighting for something matters, even when it's hopeless. I've tried to pass that on to my children. Thank you. Nancy takes his hand, finds her voice. You're welcome, she says. And for the first time in 40 years, she means it. London, 1990s. Nancy Wake is in her 80s now, living in a small hotel near Hyde Park. Her body is failing, arthritis, weak lungs, a heart that's been through too much. But her mind is still sharp, still restless. She's been giving interviews lately. Journalists and historians want to record her stories before it's too late. At first, she refuses. What's the point of dredging up old horrors? But then she realizes, if she doesn't tell the truth, someone else will tell lies. So she talks. She tells them about parachuting into France, about the bicycle ride, about killing with her bare hands. She doesn't soften it, doesn't make it noble or romantic. War, she says, is ugly and brutal and necessary. She did what she had to do, and she'd do it again. The interviews turn into books, documentaries, a miniseries that gets the facts half right. Nancy watches them with amused exasperation. They cast some actress who looks nothing like her. They add romance that never happened. They sanitize the violence. Hollywood rubbish, she mutters, but people are paying attention. A new generation discovers her story. Young women write letters thanking her for being a role model. Veterans groups invite her to speak. France awards her the Legion of Honor, their highest decoration. She's finally getting the recognition she deserved decades ago. But recognition doesn't heal old wounds. Nancy still dreams about Henri, about the men she killed, about the friends who died. The ghosts never left, they just learned to share space with the memories of gratitude and honor. Money is still tight. The pensions barely cover her hotel bills. She lives simply, almost monastically. No luxuries, no implants. She survived worse than poverty. In 2001, she decides to move back to London permanently. Australia never felt like home, not really. London is where she trained, where she became the white mouse. It feels fitting to end where it all began. She's 90 years old, living on tea and stubbornness. Friends from the war years visit when they can. Fewer each year, the generation is dying off. They sit in her small room and remember the days when they were young and dangerous and fighting for something that mattered. Nancy tells them stories they've heard before. They never interrupt. The hotel staff adores her. She's demanding and particular and tips generously when she has money. She flirts with the young doorman, makes him blush. Even at 90, she has that spark, the charm that once fooled Gestapo officers. One day, a French delegation arrives unannounced. They've come to tell her that a new documentary is being made, fully funded by the French government. This one will get it Right, they promise. They want her input. Nancy agrees on one condition: don't make me a saint. I wasn't. I was angry and vengeful, and I killed people. Tell the truth. They promise. The documentary airs in 2003. It's raw and honest and pulls no punches. Nancy watches it alone in her hotel room, sees her younger self in archival footage, dark-haired, fierce-eyed, terrifyingly competent. Sees the faces of men she fought alongside, most of them long dead. Sees France as it was, burning, suffering, fighting back. When it ends, she turns off the television, sits in silence, thinks about everything she survived, everything she's lost, everything she's won. Not bad, she says to the empty room. Not bad at all. London, 2007. Nancy Wake is 95 years old, and her body is finally giving up. She's moved to a nursing home in Kingston-upon-Thames, a quiet place with gardens and nurses who know her story. Some of them are French. They treat her like royalty. She hates being in a nursing home, hates the wheelchair, the medications, the indignity of needing help to do things she once did effortlessly. She was a woman who parachuted behind enemy lines, who killed Nazis and blew up trains. Now, she needs assistance getting to the bathroom. It's infuriating, but she accepts it with the same pragmatism she accepted everything else. You adapt or you die. Nancy adapted. The world has changed beyond recognition. The internet, mobile phones, a unified Europe with no borders. Germany and France are allies now, partners. The idea would have been unthinkable in 1944. Nancy thinks it's wonderful. She didn't fight so people could keep hating each other. She fought so they could stop. Visitors still come. Fewer now, most of the old fighters are gone. But their children come. Their grandchildren. They bring flowers and wine and stories passed down through generations. My grandfather said you save his life. My grandmother hid you in her barn. My father learned to shoot from you. Nancy listens and nods. Sometimes she remembers. Sometimes she doesn't. At 95, memory is selective. But the important things stay sharp. Oliviers Fuss, the smell of the forest, the weight of a gun, the sound of parachutes opening in the night. A documentary crew visits in 2010 to interview her for yet another program. Nancy is 98 now, frail and impatient. The interviewer asks the same tired questions. What was it like being a woman in a man's war? Nancy gives him a withering look. I didn't think about being a woman. I thought about staying alive and killing Germans. Gender didn't enter into it. Were you ever afraid? Every single day. Only fools aren't afraid. The trick is doing it anyway. Do you have any regrets? She pauses, thinks about Henri, about the life they could have had, about the normalcy she gave up. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret what I did. Someone had to fight. I'm glad it was me. The interview ends. The crew packs up. Nancy watches them go and feels tired. So tired. She's lived too long, survived too much. Everyone she loved is dead. The war she fought is ancient history. She's an artifact, a museum piece. But she's not done yet. In 2011, she tells the nursing home staff her final wish. When she dies, and it won't be long now, she wants her ashes scattered in the hills of Auvergne, among the forests where she fought, where she was most alive. They promise. That night, Nancy sleeps deeply. No nightmares, no ghosts, just peace. She dreams of parachuting into France on a moonlit night. Young again, fearless again, ready for anything. It's a good dream. London, August 7th, 2011. Nancy Wake dies peacefully in her sleep at the age of 98. There's no drama, no last words, no cinematic goodbye. She simply stops breathing, as if she's finally decided she's had enough of this world. The news spreads quickly. Obituaries appear in every major newspaper. The Times, Le Monde, the Sydney Morning Herald. They call her the most decorated Allied servicewoman of World War II. They list her medals. George Medal, Croix de Guerre with 2 palms, Médaille de la Résistance, Medal of Freedom, and dozens more. They recount her exploits, the bicycle ride, the bare-handed killing, the 7,000 Maquis fighters she led. The headlines call her a hero, an icon, a legend. Nancy would have hated the fuss, but she's not here to complain, so the world mourns in its own way. In Australia, the Prime Minister issues a statement of condolence. In France, President Sarkozy orders flags flown at half-mast. In Auvergne, the old men and women who remember La Madonna light candles and weep. True to her wishes, Nancy's ashes are sent to France. A ceremony is held in Mont-Lucan, the town closest to where she fought. Thousands attend, veterans, government officials, ordinary French citizens who know the name and the legend. The mayor gives a eulogy. He speaks of courage and sacrifice, of a woman who had no obligation to fight for France, but did anyway, at enormous personal cost, of someone who asked for nothing and gave everything. Nancy Wake was not French by birth, he says, but she was French by choice, by blood, by sacrifice. She is ours, and we will never forget her. After the ceremony, a small group hikes into the hills. Old Maquis fighters, too old to fight, but not too old to remember. They carry Nancy's ashes to a clearing in the forest. The same forest where they once hid from Germans, where Nancy trained them, where they became soldiers. They scatter her ashes among the trees. No speeches, no formality, just old warriors saying goodbye to their Madonna. The wind catches the ashes and carries them through the forest, settling on leaves and stones and earth. Nancy Wake has finally come home. In the years that follow, more honors come. Streets and schools are named after her. A museum in Auvergne dedicates an entire wing to her story. Books continue to be written. Documentaries continue to be made. But the real legacy isn't in medals or monuments. It's in the lives she saved, the people who survived because she fought, the children and grandchildren who exist because Nancy Wake parachuted into France and refused to let evil win. She was a journalist who became a spy, a socialite who became a warrior, a woman who fought in a man's war and proved that courage has no gender. She killed without mercy and loved without reservation. She lived 98 years and died on her own terms. And now, in the forests of Auvergne, the white mouse finally rests. If you found this story powerful, subscribe to our channel for more untold stories of World War II. Next, we'll explore the night witches, Soviet female pilots who bombed the Nazis in darkness with planes made of plywood. These were women the Germans feared so much they offered rewards for their capture. Hit the like button, leave a comment about which war hero we should cover next, and join us as we continue to bring history's greatest untold stories to light. Remember, the greatest weapon against tyranny is the refusal to be silent. These heroes refused. We honor them by remembering.